Welcome to Tales of Blue, where I'm delighted to be joined by a former player who had a whirlwind life at Main Road, making his debut aged just 16. He'd go on to endure 5 managers, 2 relegations, 1 promotion, 1 Young Player of the Year award, and star in a 10-1 Main Road victory. Welcome, Paul Simpson. How you doing, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, Mark, and thanks for inviting me on to speak to you tonight.
Big pleasure. So joining City as an apprentice professional in July 1982, just 2 months later, you find yourself elevated to the reserve team from the youth team setup, where you star in a 6-1 victory over Oldham, hitting 2 goals. Pretty impressive start for a then 16-year-old. What do you recall of that fixture?
Well, I remember the whole start to my City career, to be honest with you. I came down from Carlisle, got put into digs with Jamie Hoyland in Burnage on Kingsway. And I remember the first few weeks of pre-season being, I've got to say, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. The pre-season training was incredibly hard. They focused on getting you as fit as you possibly could. And I remember getting slogged for those first few weeks, and then all the little brown wage slips were coming round at the end of the month, and I didn't get one. And I'm sort of thinking, what's going on here? And I found out that because I was still only 15 up until the 26th of July, I didn't get paid. I was too young. So I didn't even get anything for those first few weeks of being a professional footballer. So it was quite a tough ask, really. And then I remember going home for the first time back to see my parents in Carlisle. And my mum thought I'd been starved to death because the training was so hard. I'd literally wasted away. And my face looked gaunt. I think it was probably the first time that I was ever properly fit and ready to go and play football. So that was a tough start, but then it took me a while to get into the reserve team, and I was always on the fringes of it and close. And then I got my debut in that reserve game where we won against Oldham, and it was quite a strange situation really because the John Bond was under a little bit of pressure at the time, and I think he felt that throwing me into it as a young winger, probably fair to say, quite an exciting attacking player. He probably looked on me going in and thinking it might just bide him a little bit of time and deflect a bit of the anger away from him as the manager. And I was lucky enough to get my debut straight after.
Well, your debut comes just 4 days later. You're promoted again, this time making your full first team debut, becoming the club's second youngest ever debutant at the time, behind the late great Glimpardo, when you start for Bond in City's 3-2 win over Coventry at Main Road, aged just 16. So how did you take all that in, and what sort of advice did the senior players offer you as words of encouragement? Because it was quite a frightening world for a 16-year-old then, Paul, wasn't it, that?
Oh, it was madness, absolute madness. I remember on the Friday going into the first team changing room, and at the time, if you played in the reserves and you were young enough, you also played in the Lancashire League on the Saturday, and the team sheets used to go up on the notice board in the first team changing room. I remember walking up and just looking at the Lancashire League team sheet thinking, I don't believe this. I've been left out of the youth team. That was the first sheet I looked at, and everybody's going, Simo, you're on the other one. And I looked and I was in the first team squad. And I don't even remember how I felt about it. I think it was just utter shock, if I'm going to be honest with you. And then we trained, and after training, it was all the photographs were getting taken, and I still see photographs now. People keep reminding me of it in scruffy old training kit that we used to have, and I'm on my knees scrubbing the baths while the other lads are looking at other apprentices were looking over the edge. And I've got photographs of me cleaning my boots in the boot room and stuff like that, which is all jobs that we used to do at the time. The apprentice, well, they're not even apprentices, the scholars now, they don't do that sort of thing anymore. But I thought it was a brilliant thing to have to do, because it gave you a real discipline, and it gave you a real understanding of what you needed to be a good professional. And I always say that about Manchester City. People talk about getting coached, and at City in the youth team, I can't really say we were coached in terms of football. We were just expected to know the game. We had Tony Buck and as we just talked about earlier, the late Glimpardo. Those were my youth team coaches. And the big thing they wanted to insist on us and to try and drill into us was about being a good professional and what it takes to be a good professional. I remember Tony Buck had a saying about don't be a happy amateur. And it was really important to them that we had all of the tools to learn how to be a footballer. And I really do think cleaning the boots and cleaning the baths out and sweeping the change rooms, I think they were a massive part of my education in football that helped me to stay in the game for so long.
So how did you feel you performed during that debut? And what did you call the reception you got from the Main Road crowd?
Well, I remember coming out at the start of the game because I don't know if you remember going back to those days, 1982. Players didn't warm up on the pitch. So the first time I actually saw the crowd and heard the crowd was me running down the tunnel to go and start the game. And the noise that I ran out to was something that I'd never experienced before. And that was the shock to the system. But people always ask me, did I get nervous? But I think it all happened so quickly. I didn't actually get time to be nervous. You know, I turned up for training and I'm in the team. I didn't know anything about it. The Friday just passed by, going back to my digs and just getting on with my life. Saturday, it all happened quickly. The game came round. And I think I did okay in the game. I don't think I had a great game. I remember I was playing against Danny Thomas, who was a good young right back at the time. And I did okay in the game. I remember setting up a goal for David Cross, getting up to the far post. And probably one of the only things I ever did positively with my head in my whole career was I just nodded one back across for Crossy to get a goal. So I felt as though I played my part in the team without, if I'm going to be honest with you, really setting the world alight.
Sure. Well, it was reported at the time that 3 carloads of the Simpson family had made their way to Main Road for the game. Did you get to see any of your immediate family before or after the fixture?
Not before, no, I didn't. I saw them all after the game, and then I actually went home to Carlisle after the game as well. So it was nice to actually get a lift back rather than trying to jump on a train and get up to Carlisle. So that was a pleasant change. And you know, the thing that I look back on it, and that day in particular was, it was a sort of payback time for my mum and dad, who'd done all the travelling around for me in my schoolboy days, to go and standing on a freezing cold evening or Friday, Saturday, whatever, Sundays as well, watching me on the sides of parks pitches playing in my local team. That was sort of their payback, really, them coming down for that game and them being able to see, I suppose, the work that they'd done to get me where I was at that point. But I do also remember my dad saying to me, "Don't think you've made it. There's still a long way to go. That's one game now. You've got, you know, if you're going to have a career, you're going to have to stick at it." And you know, that was my whole philosophy on my career, really, was to stick at it and try and play as many games of football as I possibly could.
It kept you quite grounded, and everyone around you kept your feet on the ground. So after making the first team so early, after joining the club, did you have much more interaction with John Bond during the remainder of that season?
Not positive, I've got to be honest with you, because I came in for that game, so I started that one. I can't remember the sort of run of the games, but we played Wigan in the cup away, where I wasn't involved in that game. We had Everton away, where I was sub, and I think it was Sunderland away was the third game, and I think the next game was Manchester United away, and I got left out of the squad completely for the United game. And my next sort of association with John Bond was playing in the FA Youth Cup, and we lost away at Leeds against a really strong Leeds side. And he got all of us into the players' lounge and literally went round each one of us and absolutely slaughtered us for being rubbish in this game against Leeds.
Wow,
And
this is the youth team, lads.
This is the youth team. John Bond came round and he just slaughtered us all. And in a way, you know, I look back on it now, and again, it was an education in football, because you had to learn. You had to roll with the punches. It was and I'm not being dramatic about it. In football in those days, it was survival of the fittest, survival of the strongest, and not particularly strongest as in the biggest muscles. It was who had the temperament to be able to deal with that, and to be able to be strong enough to come through it. And I remember him having a go at me, and I didn't lose any respect for him for doing this. I just felt it was his way of trying to motivate me. He actually said to me that, you know, it broke his heart that he'd given me my debut for City after the way I'd performed in the Leeds game. And you have a choice to make when you get told that. You think, right, well, I'll shove that right down your throat, or I'm going to crawl under a stone and hide away from it. And I just thought, right, let's crack on with it. Let's see what we can do differently. And I've got to say, over the rest of the season, I don't think I did particularly well. I had a really good start to the season, made my debut, but then I didn't do particularly well after that. And there's a little bit of me wonders whether I got a little bit big-headed because I'd made my debut, or was a little bit wonders whether I was just a typical 16-year-old kid who has ups and downs that I've seen throughout my career, and particularly in coaching and management. I've seen so many young players who come in, have a really good game, have a really good month, and then they have a bit of a dip in their form, and maybe that was just me. Maybe that was just me as well. So it was just part and parcel of football. And one of the other things that happened around the time, I remember one of my final training sessions with the first team. We were all preparing for a game. We trained on the Friday, and John Bond said to everybody, right, get yourself, we were training at Platt Lane in these days, changing at Main Road, get to Platt Lane and train. And at the end of the short session, John Bond said, right, everybody get back to the ground, go and get changed, get rested for the game tomorrow. I'll name the team tomorrow. And as I was walking off, Tony Buck shouted over to me. He said, Simo, come over here. So I said, yeah, what is it, Skip? And he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to the ground. Oh, he said, you've made it now, have you? I said, no, not at all. I said, the gaffers told me to go, so I'm going back. And he went, no, you haven't made it. He said, and don't think you have made it. He said, you can be lucky to play one game, lucky to play 10 games. You've only had a career if you play 50, 100 games or more than that. And that drove me right through my career, because I intended, I've been really lucky in my career in terms of finances, because I've stayed in it for such a long time. But my motivation was never money. Don't get me wrong, I always enjoyed the trappings of being a footballer, and I still enjoy the trappings of the life that you can get from being involved in football. I don't deny that, but that was never my motivation. I've never lost a contract in terms of money. I've not turned a contract down because the money wasn't right. I've gone if I felt it was the right thing to do. And that comment from Tony Buck was what drove me right through my career, because I wanted to play as many games as I could. And when I retired at Carlisle United, a guy we had at the club working as a reserve team physio, a guy called Jeff Huff, he got a shirt done and presented with it, and it had the number 808 on the back of it. And I'm going, what's the significance of that, Jeff? And he said, that's the total of appearances you've made, subs and starts. And when he told me that, I instantly thought of Tony Buck, and I thought, I've had a career, in Bucky's terms, I've had a career. And I've since seen Tony Buck, and I've actually thanked him for making that comment to me, because it drove me right through my career. I've seen Glyn Pardo as well. It was really strange, because when I first joined the FA, my first role was working as the assistant coach for the under 16s who had the 2001 birthdays, and Tommy Doyle was in that squad, and they played at St George's, and Glyn came with Doyley's family, and he came up, and it was brilliant to see him, because I hadn't seen him since 1988, and this is 5 years ago now, I think we're talking. And he said to me at the time, he said, on this day, he said, Simo, you must have hated me, did you? I said, no, I didn't, Glyn, to be honest. I said, at the time, I realized it was really tough, and it was a hard place to be. But those standards that you and Bucky gave me and instilled into me, that for me is the only reason I've had a long career, because I stuck with them all through my career. And even as a manager and a coach now, I still want players to have the standards that Glyn and Bucky put into us in those days, because I think they're really, really important. Firstly, to do the right things on and off the grass. It's not just about playing football on the grass. You have to be a proper person off it as well, and to work hard all the time, accept that it's going to be tough, but be a good professional. And I still to this day believe that was because of Tony Buck and Glyn Pardo.
How fantastic to hear that their legacy, their things they installed still burns as strong as it does, obviously, today. That's fantastic. So John Bond eventually leaves the club during the campaign, which seemed City slip out the first division. Billy McNeil arrives, and you're soon loaned out to Irish side Finn Hearts, along with John Beresford. How did that move happen, and what was explained to you? Was it something you wanted to do, or?
I think the way it was framed up to me was that I didn't really get the feeling I had much choice in the matter, if I'm going to be really honest with you. Billy came in. He didn't know me from Adam. He didn't know who I was. He just knew I was a young attacking player. And he just pulled me and said, we've got an Irish league club. Finn Harps wanted, and originally it was supposed to be me and Jamie Hoyland going. He wanted me and Jamie to go over there on loan for 3 months to get some experience, to get some first senior football in the Irish league, and then come back to the club. And it was just at the time, in pre-season, we were playing for Finn Harps. We were playing Celtic. We had a game against City. We had a game against Southampton. And the Southern Irish League was quite a strong league as well at the time, with teams like Sligo and Shamrock Rovers, who were, competing in European football. So it felt it was good experience. And the way Billy said it to me was that I've got a lot of forward players in the football club. I'm going to be bringing more in, and there's not going to be a lot of opportunities for you, so it'll do you good to go. So I went over. In fact, the day before I went over, Jamie was ill and he had to withdraw, and they sent John Beresford instead. So it was me and Bez went over to start with. We did the pre-season games, and John decided he didn't want to stay. He made the decision to go home. But I felt as though it would have been a really good thing for me to stay there, and just to get the football. And I was enjoying my football. And we had a manager called Patsy McGowan who really, really looked after us. I stayed in a hotel for the first few weeks in the middle of Ballybuffet, which is where Finn Harps was. And I really enjoyed my football. I had a good start to the season. I was doing okay in it, managing to get a few goals, creating a few opportunities. But I just got to this point where there was me, as I said, Bez left. We had another guy called Ian Arkwright who was out there, a Welsh guy called Tony Gard, and the three of us were the only three who were full-time at the club, and the rest were all part-time. So at best, we trained one night a week with the players and played on a Sunday. And I was playing golf every day, trying to keep myself fit, but I was young and probably didn't really know what I should be doing, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. And I just got to a point after 2 months of it, where I just felt as I was going to get forgotten if I didn't do something about it. And it was funny, really, because at the time I was a full-time pro at Man City. I'd signed my pro contract and I was on £70 a week. Over in Ireland, you were paid in punts, and they were giving me, I think I was getting 150 punts a week, but they were going to give me a bonus of 10,000 punts if I stayed, and for the full 3 months. Well, I'd never even seen £10,000, imagined I was ever going to earn 10,000 punts. But I had this decision to make. Do I stay and get me 10,000 punts in a month's time, or do I just, for the sake of my career, go? And I remember ringing Billy McNeil and saying, listen, Gaffer, I'm getting really worried here. There's only three of us who are full-time. I'm training one night a week. I'm getting really good at golf, but I'm worried about my career. And it was, for me as a young kid, it was brilliant, because he literally said, right, Simmer, go and speak to Patsy, the manager, and tell him that you're coming back tomorrow and we'll book a flight for you and you're coming back to England. And that was it. I came back, and I got welcomed back into the club, which I think that's what I needed, if I'm going to be honest with you, because I think if I'd have got on that phone to Billy and he'd have said to me, no, I need you to stay out there, I think I'd have probably realised my days at City were numbered. But thankfully, he made that call and said, no, come back. And funny enough, I ended up coming back and getting straight back into the first team for one game.
I was just going to say, Paul, once back at City, you were thrown straight back in at the deep end, really. A lot of injuries at the time and a lot of loss of form, threatened to derail our push for promotion. You played a starring role on the game, first game back against Cardiff in a 2-2 draw at Main Road, scoring that. How did that fixture, because it was like a second debut, really, coming back and playing in that game. How did that compare to the Coventry game a couple of years earlier?
Well, again, it came about really quickly, and so a little bit earlier than that, early on in that week, I was having a really tough time. I've got to say, I wasn't playing well. My City days were looking numbered. I was coming out of contract at the end of the season. And on the Tuesday night, we had a reserve game, and Bob Stokoe, who was the Carlisle manager at the time, came to the reserve game because he was looking to take me on a free transfer. And I was rubbish in the first half, and I found out after that Bob Stokoe looked at me and didn't think I could help Carlisle, so he left at half time and he took in another game on the way home, back up north. Second half, I played well, and that week we lost Clive Wilson and Gordon Smith, both injured, and I was the only left-sided player left in the club, and I got into the team against Cardiff. So I'd gone from thinking that's my career over if I do well in this game at City, to actually getting in the team and not really thinking about, but well, actually, I suppose thinking, wow, the door's just opened for a second opportunity here, and I'm going to just go in and I'm going to enjoy myself. So I played against Cardiff, didn't feel any pressure, if I'm going to be really honest with you, was able to just go out and play quite freely. I don't think, my memory serves me right, I don't think we played particularly well on the day, and I think it was a draw, am I right in saying?
Yeah, 2-2 draw.
So we drew the game, but I got my first league goal with a volley from inside the box. And from that moment, my City career just took off again, and everything just snowballed, and it was just a fantastic run till the end of the season.
I say you continue to impress and you keep your place for the rest of the season, hitting 6 goals in 9 games. I'll come to the Charlton match shortly. But what are the main standout memories for you during that run-in, which included some eventful fixtures away at places like Portsmouth and Notts County?
Yeah. Well, I remember the Portsmouth one was a massive game. That was probably the biggest game I'd ever played in, because Portsmouth were up there in the promotion push as well, and they were a proper big physical
Big,
side.
strong side.
Really strong side, a good side as well. And down there, and I've got to say, that was the first time I played there, but right through my career, I've always found it a really difficult place to play it, down at Fratton Park. But we got the result. I got a goal in it. One of the next games I remember was the Notts County game away, where I played as a centre forward, and I think Brian Kilcline was one of the centre halves, and he was like going out to play against the Jolly Green Giant. He was an absolute beast. So that was a tough game, and I remember that we were really bad at half time, and fans getting in the change room and wanting to fight with the players because we just weren't very good. Second half, I managed to get a couple of goals and make it a little bit more respectable. But everything just was snowballing and setting it up for that last game of the season to get a result out of it, to go and try and get us over the line.
I spoke to sort of players from that time, and Mick McCarthy himself, he says you were the catalyst. You came in and were there, and it sort of kick-started the run. So a packed Main Road sees an emphatic last day 5-1 victory over Charlton to score promotion, with you again on the score sheet. How did a young Paul Simpson recall that afternoon and the atmosphere inside Main Road?
Well, I always say now that is one of the best days I've ever experienced in the whole of my football career. That big. I remember coming out, and I think the crowd was published as something like 48,000. There is not a chance there was less than 55, 60,000 in that stadium that day. It was absolute madness. I've never experienced a noise like it, and the tingle that it gave you when you ran out for the game. But it just all went well for us. I remember even before the game when we found out that I think both of the Charlton goalkeepers got ill or injured in the week leading up to it, and they had to bring a young kid back off an outward bounds course who'd gone with the rest of the apprentices, and he's thrown into this game. And, for me, knowing what it was like at Main Road in front of 25, 30,000, for this young lad to go in goals for Charlton against a rampant City side, I mean, it must have been a hell of a shock to the system. And we just got off to a good start. Well, we had a poor start, actually. We had a couple of chances against us early on where I think they might have hit the post, and we got a couple of blocks in, and maybe even Alex Williams made a good save. But once we got that first goal, we just ran away with it, and there was no looking back there. And You know, when I look back at clips of that, on my boys have shown me clips on YouTube of it and things like that, it brings a smile to my face. The thing that brings a bigger smile to my face was seeing Eddie Large in the dugout, things
Yeah.
like that. You know, I just can't imagine that sort of thing
Well, no.
happening in today's game with somebody like Eddie Large. And he was brilliant because he was in the change room before the game, cracking jokes with the players and just keeping everybody calm. And I think it was a really good thing to have that going on, because you were laughing, everybody was joking, just getting ready for the game and getting prepared for it.
Fantastic. So now really you'll cement yourself as part of the City first team going into the new season, and you start the new season with 3 goals in the opening 5 games. How did you find the transition from second to first division football? Who were the toughest opponents you recall during that
Um, I remember coming up against Spurs with people like Graham Roberts playing, and playing against players like Glenn Hoddle and Chris Waddle and these type of guys. They were just top players. Um, I don't remember anybody in particular that was really tough, but it was a definite step up in standard. But I've got to say, from the step up from the Championship to the Premier League now, I personally feel, and people may disagree, I think it's bigger step now than it was in those days. I thought the Championship was a very good league, but it wasn't a massive step to go up and play in the first division as it was then, as it is now. You know, it's a huge step now. So I thought the transition was okay for us, and the way that Billy McNeill managed me, I didn't play in every game. I tended to be used particularly at home, not away from home, which I found quite frustrating at times because I wasn't able to really get a run of form. I think nowadays players accept that you're not going to play every game and are happy
time?
to be rested. I wasn't happy to be rested, and as I said, I wanted to play as many games as I possibly could. So I always felt a sense of frustration, regardless of the fact I was 17, 18-year-old. I was frustrated that I wasn't starting every game. But it was just it was a buzz to be involved and still to be playing in football. When I don't know if all footballers are the same, but when I was a kid playing, it was my dream to be a professional footballer, to get an apprenticeship. And when you're apprenticeship, you want to get a pro contract. And then when you get your pro contract, you want to be a first team player, and you just want to stay as long as you could. So here I am, 17, 18-year-old, living out my childhood dreams of getting me apprenticeship, getting me pro contract. Now I'm playing first team football. I'm involved in England squads as well. It was just brilliant to be involved in it.
Crazy weekend in March 1986. City played twice. You appear from the bench in both games, the Manchester derby on the Saturday and a trip to Wembley in the Full Members Cup final on the Sunday. What are your memories of that weekend? Or when you look back now and think, did that happen? It'd be unheard of now.
Well, when I talk to people about that, and we have players who are sort of going, "Oh, we can't play Saturday, Monday, we can't play Friday night," and then they expect us to play the following week as well. It's just, and I say, yeah, we had you look at Sky Sports where they talk about Super Sunday. That was a proper super weekend, wasn't it? We're at Old Trafford on the Saturday afternoon. I remember getting on the bus going down to London, and then playing at Wembley on the Sunday afternoon, and 2 incredible games, 2-0 down against Man United at Old Trafford, come back to 2-2. I always say that I was on the verge of getting the equaliser at Old Trafford when I was coming onto it with my right foot, but Arthur Albiston got in before me, and he probably did me a favour because I think I'd have probably cleared the Stretford end with my right foot if I'd have tried to score that. So Arthur did me a big favour there anyway, but I always tell people it would have been me anyway. So coming on in that game, and then being subbing the game down at Wembley, and again it was a real strange game, 5-4 and 2 players getting hat tricks, and it was when I came on, it was a case of, look, go and see what you can do, see if you can turn it around, and we managed to get a few goals and took it right to the final whistle, which was a brilliant game to be involved in. Unfortunately, that was my first game at Wembley. And that was the old stadium. My first game at Wembley, and I still haven't won at Wembley. I've lost in that game. I've lost in an Anglo-Italian final. I've lost in a Championship playoff final. I've lost in a League Two playoff final with Shrewsbury. So it's not been a happy hunting ground, and I'm hoping the next time, whenever that might be, if I'm lucky enough to go back, I'm hoping I can get a victory.
How was your relationship with Billy McNeill during this first division period for City?
Very good. Yeah. I mean, in those days, you didn't have a pally relationship with him. You just got on with your game, and all you want the manager to do is to pick you. You know, it wasn't about relationships then, but I always felt he respected me. I always felt as though he thought I could do something for the team. He was very strong, very hard sort of guy. You know, always insisted on high standards, and if you didn't reach those high standards, boy, you knew about it. He let you know. But no, I have to say, I always felt I got on well with him. And when I've bumped into him again since, when he was back up at Celtic as an ambassador, he was really welcoming to me. So I'm hoping that he must have felt that I'd done something good for him.
Absolutely. So going into the 86-87 season, see City lose quite a few senior players with the likes of David Phillips, Mark Lillis, Paul Power, all leaving the club. Did you all thinking at the time we may struggle going into the new campaign?
I think we were always a bit of a yo-yo team, weren't we, at the time, Hart? We were never really considered to be although we were a big football club, we were never considered to be a team that was going to challenge in the first division. So, yeah, I think we probably did accept that it was going to be a bit of a struggle for us, and that's how it turned out. It was a tough season for us. We weren't able to compete at that level, but I think at the time it was probably what was expected from most people, except the fans. If I'm going to be really honest with you.
What do you call Billy McNeill's sudden departure? Because reports suggest that he left the team coach that headed to Southend for a League Cup fixture, got off the coach, and that was that from Big Billy.
Well, I don't remember it happening like that. I remember him going. I remember it being a real shock. We were struggling. Aston Villa was struggling. I personally never looked on Aston Villa as a bigger football club than us and a better opportunity. But I think at the time, Billy was probably under a bit of pressure and his job was on the line. He maybe felt that was a safe option to go and walk out and do it. I don't remember how it happened, if I'm going to be really honest. I just remember Billy McNeill being with us and then thinking, wow, he's left us to go to Aston Villa. I don't see that as being a step forward, but he obviously did at the time. And then we're going through another transitional period where it's tough at the club and you just got to get your head down and do what you can.
So after that difficult 86-87 campaign, relegation was confirmed on the final day of the season at West Ham. Did you have a chance, Paul, to leave the club at that point, or was it not something you even considered?
No, I was never. I'd never even considered it, and it wasn't something that was ever discussed with me. I remember at the end of the season, we went to Gabon on an end-of-season tour. We played against the Gabon national team and the Gabonese national champions. And I was going away to the Toulon tournament with England under 21s in the June. So I was really happy to be going to Gabon. It was a strange trip to go on, going into Africa for an end of season trip. And Mel Machin had been given the job. And I went over there you know, I sort of used it as an opportunity to keep fit, to go to Toulon with England. And when we were over in Gabon, we trained properly. Mel was trying to get his ideas into us, and we did all of that sort of stuff. And he basically said to me, he really wanted me to stay at the club. He wanted me to be a part of what he wanted to do going forward. And I ended up going to Toulon thinking, wow, this could be brilliant for me. I've got a manager who really trusts me, seems to want to play football, seems to like what I do. And I think it could be a really good opportunity for me. Unfortunately, once we got back from Toulon and I played in that tournament and came back for pre-season, it didn't quite turn out as I hoped it would be working under Mel Machin.
You say because you didn't really appear till sort of mid-October from the 87-88 season. So what was it injuries, Paul?
No, we went, we did our pre-season And Mel Machin came in and was really, really clear. It's the first time I've got to say that we really got coached under Mel Machin. He was a very, very good coach, very clear about how he wanted to play. And what he was asking of me and David White was that basically when we had the ball, when we were in possession, he wanted us to play as wingers and to go and get forward. And when Whitey was going down the right hand side, he wanted me in at the far post, which is my game. I used to get probably 6-8 goals a season tapping in at the far post. But when we lost possession, so if the ball was on the right hand side, he wanted all of the back four to push across, and basically me as left winger to try and be sort of a semi left back as well. So Andy Hinchcliffe was playing behind me. Inchy had to push right over and be in a left centre back position, and me tucking round a little bit further. So I was doing it, but then when we won the ball, I then had to try and break forward as well and try and play as a winger. And I did actually find it really difficult. David White, who was an absolute flying machine and who could catch pigeons, he was fine doing it. So we were talking all through pre-season saying, oh, this is difficult. Don't know if I can do this. We got to a point sort of halfway through pre-season and Mel asked the question, is everybody okay? Has anybody got any questions? And I probably made the stupid mistake, probably one of the many times I've opened my mouth and should have kept it shut, and just said, well, I've got a bit of an issue, Gaffer, and I just wondered if you could explain it. I'm finding it really difficult because when we break down the right, I'm finding I'm 5-10 yards outside the 18-yard box. When Whitey crosses it in, I can't quite get there and get on the end of things. And he said to Whitey, how do you find it then, Whitey? And Whitey was quicker than me. He was run faster than me. So when I've got there and crossed it, Whitey was in at the far post. So that was it then. That was Mel took umbrage to me questioning his tactics, didn't like the fact I'd questioned this. And I very rarely then, I started a few games, didn't really play a lot, but it was really obvious to me, and whether it was being done on purpose by Mel, he was leaving me out. Whenever an opportunity came to leave me out, I was the one who got left out, and that continued right through the season, and I found it really frustrating. And when I did get that opportunity, I just didn't feel as if I had enough of a run of games to actually be able to show what I was capable of. It's just one of them things. Managers like some players, don't like others, and I just felt that I wasn't Mel Machin's player, and it was as simple as that, really.
It was a decent sort of balance of experienced players that season mixed with youth team players. But see, we only managed a 9th place finish. Do you think sort of the side we had, Paul, we should achieve? I'll come to the 10-1 game shortly, but do you think we should achieve more that season with that mixture of side? Because there's some good experienced pros mixed with the lads.
There was probably enough to achieve more, definitely. There was enough in there. But I think it was more just Mel was finding his feet, and he was building his team, and he was getting it exactly how he wanted to. And obviously it takes a little bit of time to build that. And I think the next season was the season that we got promoted. So it was obviously the right thing for him. Again, as I said, at that period in City's in the history of City, we were a little bit of a yo-yo team. So we weren't quite good enough to be up in the top division, but we were always pushing to be up at the top of the second division, and that was a typical Manchester City season at the time.
So November the 7th, 1987, City 10, Huddersfield 1. You play a starring role in that one with 4 assists. Though Huddersfield were probably actually started the better side and had a good few chances earlier on, but how did it feel to be part of a team that actually just scored 10 goals in a single game? What do you call the manager saying afterwards?
I don't remember what was said afterwards. I just remember it being one of those games where everything just went right for us. We were playing balls over the top, and Tony Adcock, Paul Stewart, Dave White were getting on the end of it. I was putting crosses in, and Stewie was getting up at the far post and scoring goals. And it was just one of those days. And it was quite strange, really, because Andy May and his wife then Donna, me and Jackie, my wife, were going out for dinner with them on that Saturday night. So it was strange that Andy was on the receiving end. He did get the penalty in the goal for Huddersfield, but it was a bit of a strange night knowing that we'd just smashed them 10-1 and he was part of it. But it was one of those games where everything just went right for us, and 3 lads getting a hat trick. I remember going up to the sponsors lounge and them 3 getting a bottle of champagne for their hat tricks, and me getting a bottle of champagne for man of the match for me assist. So it was quite a good day for me, really.
That season, it was the man of the match who got the ball. But obviously, with 3 players getting hat tricks, Bernard Halford was beside himself finding balls for everyone. So you ended up with a bottle of champagne. That's how the story goes there.
No, that's it.
So for the start of the following season, Paul, you seem to be completely frozen out of the first team picture and appear just once more for City before sort of moving on to Oxford. Did you know you'll be leaving?
No, I didn't. I remember one midweek game. I wasn't getting a game. We brought Nigel Gleghorn in, Nigel did really well and played very, very well. Took that left side. He was a different type of player to me. He had a really creative sort of game. He had a wonderful left foot, but he wasn't a winger as such. He was more of a left-sided midfielder. wasn't the same type of player as me. But that was obviously the type of player Mel Machin wanted. So Gleggy started the season. We then had a game. I think Nigel might have been injured. And we did our match prep, and Mel was going to, in the match prep, he was going to start Jason Beckford. And I went to see him after training. I said, look, tell me, what have I done wrong? What do I need to do to get in your side? He went, well, what do you want to happen? I said, I want to play. I want to play first team football. I think I can do a job for the team. So he said, right, okay, you can play tomorrow night. So I played in that game, a midweek fixture. I don't remember who it was. Played, did okay. And then Nigel Gleghorn was fit and I got left out the side again. And I remember going to see Mel and saying to him, I need to be playing. I've gone from being an England under-21 international. I can't even get in City's side in the second division now. I need to know what's going on. Have I got a future here? Do you want me here, or what do you want to happen? And he said to me, you've definitely got a future. I want you part of the club. I don't want you to go. You're going to be a part of this football club and you'll get your opportunities. And then the next day, I got a phone call off Jimmy Frizzell to say, we've accepted an offer from Oxford United. You can go down and speak to them. And it literally was one day speaking to Mel and yes, you're part of it. Next day, I get a phone call. So I went down, spoke to Brian Horton, who was the manager, and Nobby just made me feel he made me feel $1 million the way he talked me up. He talked to me about where I could fit into the team, what I would do to the team, how I was going to be the main player for them. And he just made me feel good. And I just decided, again, as a footballer, I wanted to play football. I realised I wasn't going to play for Mel. And I remember getting a phone call off a couple of directors saying to me that, please stay. We don't want you to go. We think you'll be a part of our team moving forward. You'll be here longer than the manager. But the team were doing really well. It was the year of the bananas, wasn't it? Where all the fans were absolutely loving it. And I'll be honest with you, the team were doing really well without me in it. So I couldn't see a way of getting back into it. And I had to just be realistic and just accept that my Man City days were over. And as much as it was disappointing to leave, that was football. I needed to go. I needed to play football. I couldn't sit on my backside and be part of a promotion winning team, but not actually be a part of it because I didn't play. And I just didn't want that to happen. So I went to Oxford, and I was going to say I don't have any regrets. I don't have any regrets about how my career turned out because of moving to Oxford, but I definitely have regrets about leaving Man City because I wish I could have. I wish I was able to have stayed longer and to have been a part of the club for years to come, to be honest.
And certainly did. So you didn't have to wait long before you returned, Paul, to Main Road in the November with your new side. What reception did you get from the Main Road faithful that afternoon?
I got a really good reception. The Kipaks were absolutely brilliant. And again, it sounds really daft, this, and it sounds a bit soft, if I'm going to be honest with you. But You've been at games many times where the crowd give a player a really good reception and they thank them and applaud them and wave, and then they get abused for it. You know what I mean? You then get booed and laughed at. And I didn't really know. And since then, I feel like I could slap myself because the City fans have been magnificent to me since I left the club. But because I didn't know whether they were being sarcastic or being genuine, I didn't wave to them. I didn't clap them when they gave me a good reception. And I don't have many regrets in my career, but that's one of them. And as I
No,
say, it sounds a bit soft, really, but
no,
that is
not at all. I can safely
one of
say it would have
my
been
only
genuine.
regrets that I didn't do it, that, and I look back now and think, you bloody idiot, why didn't you just clap them and thank them? Because they were absolutely brilliant to me. One of the things that happened in my Man City career, in the Kippax, when they all used to sing, there was a pal of mine who at the time who went to the City games. He was a season ticket holder, fanatical, and he took a mate down to a game from down south. And when the City fans were singing Simo, Simo, his southern mate went, "Who's Seymour? Who's this Seymour fella?" And he had to tell him, and we've named a couple of our houses the Seymours after that Man City. So it's not SIMMO, it's SEY, because this guy saying, "Who's Seymour?" And a couple of our houses we've put a name to it, and it's been the Seymours that we've had just because of that Kippax chant.
Brilliant. So you score in the following return April fixture as Oxford race into a 2-0 lead. I was behind the goal as a fresh-faced 13-year-old looking straight at my former favourite player as he just bundled the goal and fist-pumped the celebration of a goal that could crush my first division dreams. How did you feel to score that so soon against City?
It was, again, one of them emotional things that I did where I bundled it into the net. It was such a spawny goal, really, and I bundled it in the net and found myself stood in the net. And I just remember standing with my arms on the net in front of the City fans, celebrating it, because the crowd behind the goal that City brought that day was incredible. You absolutely packed it out, and again, it was all the bananas and everything. And it was we got off to a great start. We went 2-0 up. I think it's fair to say City had the second half though, and ended up battering us in the end of it, didn't they?
All was soon forgiven. Did you ever have the opportunity to rejoin City, Paul, during your career?
There was rumours of it when Brian Horton came to the club. There was talk of me coming back to City then. I think if I remember rightly, I was at Derby County, and I think Nobby wanted to try and bring me back to the club then. I don't know how hard he tried, if I'm going to be really honest with you, but it never got to a point of me making a decision. So I never had a choice to make. There's been a couple of opportunities since I stopped playing to come back in a coaching role, where I've been interviewed for roles as when Mark Allen was the head of the academy. I got interviewed for the under-18s job, got interviewed for something like an under-14s job, but he decided not to give it to me. And I would have loved to have come back in some sort of coaching capacity, but that opportunity never rose. Mark Allen made the decision that I wasn't right for it.
How does Paul Simpson look back on his eventful time at Man City? Sum it up.
No. Only brilliant memories. It was a fantastic place to learn how to be a footballer. Working in, I worked with Tony Buck and Glimpardo to start with. Then John Ryan took over when he finished his playing career. So I learned so much about being a footballer and what you had to do to be a footballer. Not so much coaching and teaching me the footballing side of it, but just the other stuff. So I look back on that. I had some incredible memories. My debut at Main Road at 16-year-old, the Charlton Athletic game, that one. Being part of England sides, Manchester City helped me to do that. The reception I always got off supporters. I've only got good memories of my time at Man City. Obviously, the disappointment of leaving in 1988 when I did, but also just I realised that in terms of a football decision, it was the right thing to do. So although I was disappointed, I don't regret how my career has turned out, and Man City was a massive part of me being able to achieve that.
So what do you think of the 2021 City side? Which players do you like to see the most?
They're an absolute top class side, and they have been for a few years. The whole football club has just changed. The whole face of it is a different place to be now. When I think back to our main road days, when I think back to Platt Lane training ground, running around the parks at Withenshaw Park, I'm quite sure they don't do that now. There's enough facilities there to be able to run around the whole of the city complex at the moment. It's a magnificent team, isn't it? And you look at the young players like Phil Foden who are coming through there, are just proper talented football players. You look at the senior players who they've had there with the Silva and Gundogan and they're just they're a top football inside, and a top football club now as well. Whether or not people don't agree with the fact that it's come through investment, it doesn't matter where it comes from. All teams have to have investment to be successful, and Manchester City have invested it really well. They've developed into a magnificent club, and then now, we were always considered to be well respected abroad, but not to the level that they are now, because they're able to compete properly in Champions League football, competing in Europe, which probably only happened in the 60s and early 70s with Manchester City, apart from what they're like now.
So I've got some quick fire questions, Paul, for you. Best player you played with during your spell at City?
Played with. Oh God, that's a really tricky one. I think the person who I probably respected the most as a footballer and as a bloke, because of the way he was when I was young, is Asa Hartford.
Yeah. Favourite City game? What jumps out?
Alternate home.
Favourite away ground you played at?
I'd probably have to say Old Trafford, because of the importance of the game and what it meant to everybody. I'd have to say Old Trafford. Maybe City fans won't like that.
Favourite City goal?
My first one is the one that sticks in my mind against Cardiff. And then obviously the one that I can't forget is the one against Charlton, but more because of my ridiculous celebration afterwards as opposed to the goal.
We didn't know you were putting some hot fire out, maybe. I don't know.
I didn't know what I was doing. I just lost the plot.
I'm sure there was many others there lost it as well. So as a young apprentice at City, which first teamer would frighten the life out of the young apprentices?
Which first teamer frightened the life?
Yeah, which
got to be Joe Corrigan.
Worst dressed City teammate?
Oh God, we were all shocking dressers. When I look back at it now, I have to put myself in that category, because I remember doing a modelling shoot for Top Man, and when I see the photographs of it now, it's absolutely embarrassing what I wore in that photo shoot.
There's a blast from the past, that one. So, Billy McNeil or Mel Machin? I think I know the answer.
Billy McNeil.
You're the manager, and you have the chance to sign Phil Foden or Paul Simpson. Who'd you sign?
Or if I had an opportunity to be signed at Manchester City now, I'd sign myself without any doubt at all, because I wouldn't have to be worrying about the rest of my life.
Favourite City shirt?
Favourite City shirt? Do you know something? I've no idea, Mark, what I've actually got. As I've said to you on a number of occasions, my shirts are in a suitcase in my mum and dad's loft in Carlisle, and I haven't been able to get back to Carlisle. I don't even remember the last time.
Which one did you wear, Paul? Which one jumps that you wore? Because you wore through from 82.
As in you know what? That one on your left shoulder, that one with Saab on it, when it had Saab, the sponsor, on it, that was... Yeah. I loved that shirt. Yeah, it was a fantastic shirt. That sky blue, just a lovely colour and a really good shirt.
Yes or no? Will City win the Champions League this season?
I can't say yes or no. This is their best opportunity. I'd like to say yes.
So what's Paul Simpson of 2021 up to?
I'm now the assistant. I was going to say I'm the assistant head coach at Bristol City, but unfortunately our head coach lost his job, so we've now got a manager. So I'm basically assisting Nigel Pearson. Whether I'm an assistant head coach or an assistant manager, I've no idea. I don't even care. But I'm really enjoying the opportunity to be working back in day-to-day football.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk City with you and share your tales of blue. I wish you all the very best for the future.
Thank you.